All right, quick tutorial on how to break down a big code base because I know this happens to a lot of people. You get anxiety, right? Because you sit there and you say, "Oh my God, how am I going to figure out this huge code base?" So, what I do is I just use Miro. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll take a large like this is a good example. It's a Terraform file, right? So you've got the docs on this side. I use Arc to split the browser into two, right? So you don't have a bunch of windows floating around. You can read through things on this side. And then what I'll do is I'll just take screenshots, right? So I'll literally take screenshots of the code, copy it to my clipboard, right? Just like that. And then one at a time, it's kind of boring, but you could do it one at a time, copy them over to Miro in chunks, right? And then you get this little sort of an outline in the middle that has all the main things. So you can see here, I've kind of drawn out here. I've got the main chunks of the code because anything, whether it's Go or Python or whatever, usually is broken into classes or modules or whatever. This is Terraform, but everything is broken down into these high-level groups. Now, once you break those high-level groups up, then the final thing you do for me, oops, I didn't mean to do that. So then the next thing you're going to do is I use these stickies. So for each one of these that I don't really understand, I just ask a specific question, and then I'll spend spend an hour researching it, right? So like for example, public subnet tags, and it should be detailed. What do they do? Okay, so you might spend an hour researching this, right? You might go on ChatGPT, you might go on Google, whatever, and then you might ask something like, what's the consequence of enable NAT gateway equals false? And that might be an experiment you do, right? So what happens if you disable the NAT gateway, right? If you don't have it true, you might run that experiment, right? You definitely want to do some experiments, right? So the second part here is experiments. You've got to do experiments, right? And here's another one, right? What is an AWS managed node group, right? So you look for the things that clearly have sort of sophisticated content in them, and you sort of ask a question about them so you understand that. Like this is an obvious one, right? What does IRSA stand for? You know that that's going to come back to burn you, right? Like you run a Terraform module and you don't even know what the acronym is, right? So you get all this stuff figured out, and then once you understand those sort of several of these little granular concepts, these things sort of become breadcrumbs. And mentally what happens is as you're reading through this, the cognitive load is much lower because you have an intuitive concept of what each one of these, the hardest thing in each one of these little submodules, you've spent some time thinking about, right? And so then when you look through a big file like this, mentally you'll just be able to skim through it and you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, and it'll all start to come together, right? So yeah, that's kind of my view on what I think the right way to sort of break down a large code base is. One other thing I've been doing lately is I've been doing a lot with code spaces, right? So in general, rather nowadays when I see a new code base, I almost immediately open a code space up for it. And the cool thing about a code space is you can just cut up the code however you want and you don't have to worry about it's ephemeral. So you can make a lot of temporary files. So definitely use GitHub code spaces as well. All right, see you later.